From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Paranormal Radio with Bob Tricek on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. So now, sit back and enjoy Paranormal Radio. And here he is, the king of Paranormal Radio, live and in person, Mr. Bob Tricek.
Live and in person, I hope so. Still above the ground here anyway. Thank you, John. Very nice to be back on. We've had a couple of months absence here from Paranormal Radio because I had so many things going on. I moved, and then I had a couple of surgeries done and some personal things going on there, so we were unable to do the show for a while. But now we're back on the air here, so we should be back on once a month regular like we had been doing. Tonight's show is going to be a little different. It's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter show, too. Normally we do the full hour. But what happened today was I had scheduled a few people to come on, and one person, Colleen Carroll, she called me this afternoon and canceled. She was unable to make it. And Colleen has been with us before. She's a friend of Paranormal Radio. And she was going to come on. She called and canceled because she had some therapy done today on her knees. She had some surgery, and so she was a little under the weather from that, so she was unable to make it. And then I had some folks that were going to come on from the Midnight Terror Haunted House that they're running over in Oak Lawn, and they didn't make it. So I don't know what happened with that. We waited a few extra minutes here. We'll see if somebody walks in. Okay, if not, it'll just be me talking here. And I will talk a little bit today on, since I really didn't prepare anything, I'll talk some on cemeteries. And I'll talk a little bit about H.H. Holmes, who sometimes is billed as the world's first serial killer. So we'll talk a little bit about him. Give some announcements here first, some of the things that I've got going on. Coming up this weekend, October 10th and October 11th, over at the Moraine Valley Community College, there will be a paranormal conference. I think they charge like a $12 or a $15 admission for that, and it's an all-day thing. It'll be Saturday from 10 to 7 and Sunday from 11 to 5, and I'll be there with Colleen Carroll. My friend Colleen and I will be there, and I'll be doing some palm readings for people, and there's many other vendors there. Tom Cameron will be there, who's been on Paranormal before. Many of the folks we've had on, Ed Shanahan will be there. Ursula Bielski, I believe, is going to be there again this year. She was there last year. So there'll be a lot of people that'll be familiar to you in Paranormal that will be there. And they have a lot of things going on there. They have books they sell, and they do readings, and they do stuff. And like I said, I'll be there doing some palm readings. So that'll be this weekend, October 10th and 11th at the Moraine Valley Community College. And then October 14th, which will be next Wednesday, I will be at the Elsip Library, and I'll be there at 6 o'clock, and I'll be talking on the Columbian Exposition that we had here in Chicago in 1893, and H.H. Holmes. That's why I'll talk tonight a little bit about H.H. Holmes. I'll give you a little bit of that lecture on that one. And that will be at the Elsip Library at 6 o'clock next week, October 14th. October 22nd, I will be at the Orland Park Library, talking all about Egyptology and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Some of the things with ancient Egypt that tie into some of the legends that we have today, legends of vampires and werewolves and that kind of stuff. We'll tie that into the Book of the Dead a little bit and give you a little bit maybe better explanation of what the Book of the Dead was, and maybe you can understand it a little more better than what you're used to seeing in the movies and that kind of thing. Also, October 28th, I'll be at the Brookfield Library at 7 o'clock. Same thing, talking about the Book of the Dead over there too. And then October the 19th, this is a new program for me, and I'll be partnering up with Colleen Carroll with this one. And this will be at the Justice Library at 7 o'clock. And we're going to be doing a program there on ghost hunting. I kind of give you the history of ghost hunting, a little bit of that, some of the background of it, when it kind of started and how it's kind of gone through the years. And then we'll be demonstrating some of the equipment that's out there today that is there available for people to do some ghost hunting with. So we're kind of looking forward to that. I was going to bring on the Ballad of Resurrection Mary, because we usually get requests for that song. People like to hear that one. We've had it on before. Tonight I did not bring that. We'll bring it on next month, though, for the November show. I'll make sure I bring it on because everybody's heard that. And we'll get that on next week and play it. But this week what I did bring on was something entirely different and something not paranormal. Over the summer, I had a meeting of someone that's actually related to me. He's a cousin. I'd never met him. And we met, and he actually has a group called the Giant City Slickers. And they do kind of like bluegrass country-type music. And I got a hold of one of their CDs, and I liked their stuff and that. And I asked them, I got their permission to play something on the radio for them. And his name is Alex Kirk. And he's with the Giant City Slickers, and then some of the folks that are in the group here, Dan Goat, who does the lead guitar and vocals, Mr. Jimmy Beers, who does drums, Nate Graham, who's the acoustic bass and does vocals, Mark Stoffel, electric mandolin, and fiddle vocals. So they're kind of like a bluegrass band, and we're going to play a song that they did. So, okay, John, whenever you're ready with that, we'll play that, and that will be called the Bluegill Boogie. Like I said, nothing to do paranormal.
Bring a box of tackle and a pole and a line. Daddy and Grandpa and little brother Nate, we're all going fishing, so don't be late. Grandpa took us to a spot he'd found 10 yards out and 3 feet down. I dropped him a hook just like he said, sitting on top of a bluegill bed. Bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, that's Grandpa's fishing song. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, that's Grandpa's fishing song. Early one day, I wasn't having any luck. Dropped in my bait and my hook got stuck. Grandpa said, hey son, you're doing it wrong. Taught me how to sing his fishing song. He used rusty old scissors to cut up the worms. So we trolled around the pond, how that water would churn. 3 missing fingers on his right hand. He can still flip casts like nobody can. Bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, that's Grandpa's fishing song. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, that's Grandpa's fishing song. Grandpa could clean 1 bluegill a minute, and the turtles all loved him 'cause he tossed them the innards. He wore muddy old boots and his pants were saggy, had bluegill fillets in a Ziploc baggie. Now Grandpa is gone, but my memories are fond. He's catching all the bluegill in the land beyond. All you good people, come sing along. Gonna teach you Grandpa's fishing song. Bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, bluegill boogie, that's Grandpa's fishing song. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, come bite my hook. Here, fishy, fishy, that's Grandpa's fishing song.
Okay, there you go. That was the Bluegrass Boogie. Something I thought, like I said, nothing at all to do with paranormal, but if you listened to the show before, in the past I've had different musicians and different people on that we find from time to time that I like to put on the radio and that's how I felt about this. That's Alex Kurt and the Giant City Slickers. They play around at different places too and things. If you want to get some information on them, if you like this type of music, you'd like to go and listen to them, you can visit their website, giantcityslickers.com. Also, too, their contact info would be info@giantcityslickers.com. That's info@giantcityslickers.com, or just go to giantcityslickers.com. That's all in capital letters for that one. And that's it with that. Okay, I am going to start talking now a little bit. Like I said, since we didn't have any guests scheduled, we did have them scheduled, but no one wound up showing up for whatever reason. Hope everything's all right with everybody. What I'll do is talk a little bit about cemeteries, and then a little bit about H.H. Holmes, the serial killer. Cemeteries here in the Chicago area, we have plenty of them. That's for certain. We're a big metropolitan area here, and we've certainly got our share of cemeteries, and a lot of our cemeteries certainly have their share of paranormal activity. Just last week, we took a group out to Rose Hill Cemetery with the Central Stickney Park District there, and Rose Hill is an old cemetery. It's one of the older cemeteries in the city of Chicago, and it's very neat for the architecture that's there, and it's just a fascinating place to visit. The mausoleum is probably one of the older mausoleums in the city, and the monuments and stones there are just something to behold, something to see. You never seen anything like that. Many, many notables of the city of Chicago are buried in there. A lot of former mayors, senators, vice presidents, many people, giants of industry in Chicago. Richard Warren Sears, founder of Sears Roebuck and Company. Aaron Montgomery Ward, founder of Montgomery Wards. Jack Brickhouse. A lot of notable people. Governor Ogilvy. A lot of different governors and people are in there. Also, too, it's been known for some paranormal activity in that cemetery. The mausoleum houses the John G. Shedd Memorial, where Shedd of the Shedd Aquarium fame is there in that mausoleum, and also to Richard Sears, and the Sears Memorial there is buried. And sometimes on different occasions, people have been known to seen a top-hatted figure of a man wearing a long coat that walks through the mausoleum, and he walks the 30 feet from the Sears Mausoleum crypt over to Montgomery Ward. So we don't know what's up with that, but many people believe that is the spirit of Mr. Sears himself that visits that grave. So whatever reason, one giant of the mail order industry goes to visit the other giant of the mail order industry, and maybe they talk about things. I wonder what they think about the way business is being run these days. So that's one of the paranormal things they have there. Also, too, they have some unique tombs out there that are covered in glass. Some of them are very, very old marble statues, something you won't find anymore today in modern cemeteries. They just, how they say, they don't make them like they used to, and they don't. And one happens to be the grave of Lulu Fellows. She was a girl that died, I think, at about 16 years of age, and it's a marble figure of a little girl sitting there, and they actually have it covered over with like a glass box that covers over her stone, over the monument, because it got fragile over the years and that. And people like to go there and put money inside the... They find a little hole somewhere in the glass, and they like to slip money, dollar bills in there. So if you go, there's like dollar bills all inside the tomb there. I don't know if they ever take them out. I don't know how to get them. But for some reason, they don't know why, and no one can figure out why, but for some reason in May, that tomb will fill up with a mist. There's like a mist that will fill up inside of it, and they have no explanation why that happens. They think there's some paranormal activity connected to that, too. They just don't know what's up with that. Roseville has a real nice Civil War memorial there, a real nice fireman's monument there. Our producer here, Mr. John DeVita from Windy City Radio here, every September he's out there and he sets up. He goes to Roseville about 4:30 in the morning. He sets up out there. He sets up the radio equipment and everything, and they do a broadcast from the fireman's monument out there. I don't know if I'd want to be in Roseville at 4:30 in the morning, but he does this every year. It doesn't seem to bother him.
It's nice and quiet. Nobody in my way. And you know something, Bob? You were there last Sunday?
Yeah, not Sunday. We were there Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah.
I was there Sunday.
Yeah.
I was there last Sunday from 4:30 in the morning until 12 o'clock noon.
Setting up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, every year he does that, yeah. So Roseville's a neat cemetery. If ever you get a chance, we really highly recommend that. It's over at Ravenswood. I think it's 5800. Isn't it 5800 Ravenswood? Way up north there. Really neat cemetery to visit. Some of our local cemeteries around here, of course, we've got our Resurrection Cemetery over on Archer Road there in the Village of Justice. And, of course, that's famous for who else but Resurrection Mary, the Resurrection Mary. I'll tell just a little bit because that story's been told and retold and retold and retold so many times here. But just in case you've not heard of it, this being the month of October, I'm sure somewhere if you're watching TV and you have the news on or you have some of these different shows about paranormal on somewhere along the line, someone will mention Resurrection Mary. And there's a couple of versions of the story, but I'll just kind of give you one. We go back like to the late 1920s or the early 1930s here, and a young girl, about 26 years of age or so, we're kind of guessing at this, liked to dance at what was then called the Old Henry Ballroom, which is still there now, but now it's the Willowbrook Ballroom. And they used to have the big bands there that would play, different music, and she liked to go there dancing. And one night, late August, because these seem to be the times when Resurrection Mary sightings kind of tend to occur, so we were kind of thinking this is when the incident happened. She went there dancing with a date, and she got stood up. They don't know if they got into an argument and kind of went their separate ways, or if he just kind of stood her up, left her there on her own or whatever. But in any event, she got stuck there at the ballroom with no way to get home, so she wound up hitchhiking, trying to get back home down Archer Road, and in the process of doing that, got hit by a car, killed, and she's buried in Resurrection Cemetery. So over the years, it wasn't too many years after her death, where the spirit of a girl wearing a white dress, period dress from the late 20s, early 30s type dress with the hairstyle, the old-fashioned hairstyle done in the pin curls, very pretty, Polish girl, happened to be appearing along Archer Road. Single men would be driving by in cars. They would tend to stop, pick her up, drive her, and she'd say, where would you, just keep going, go straight ahead. And when they'd come to the gates of the cemetery, she would either say stop and dart out of the car and go through the gates of the cemetery and then just dematerialize, or sometimes she would just go out on her own, not say anything, and just just, get out of the car, gone, and disappear, and through the gate she goes, and that's it, where she's interred in the cemetery there. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Why they believe she's at such unrest over there with that. A couple of theories on that is they think that her burial there may have been what they called a term burial. This is something they used to have. The cemeteries no longer do this. What they did is you could buy a burial plot in the Depression years when people didn't have a whole lot of money. A family member would die, and it would be a big financial burden on the family. And what you would do is they had an arrangement there at the cemetery where you could put a small deposit down on a plot of ground. Your loved one could be buried, and then by the end of a long term, like a 25-year, very long term, you had to have the plot paid off, and that would be it. If you didn't have it paid off by the end of the term, they would dig your loved one up, move them, and then resell the plot to someone else. So they think this is what happened to Mary. They think this may have happened to her, that for some reason her plot was not paid for. She was dug up, moved, and she's always kind of going back in there looking for her spot where she rests. So that's kind of one version of the story. There are a few different ones there. Also, to the gates at the cemetery, to the main entrance to Resurrection, over to the left, when you're pulling in off Archer Road, the gates that are like on the far left there have some imprints kind of burned into them. And supposedly that's her handprints, where she grabs the gates when she goes in and out of the cemetery, and they're kind of burned in there. Don't bother wasting your time going into the cemetery office and asking about any of this stuff, because they will deny it, and they don't like to play up to it. Catholic cemeteries, don't like to really kind of play up to the supernatural, and Resurrection is a Roman Catholic cemetery. Their story is that the bar was hit by a truck, but what happened over the years was they eventually had that stripped down, burned right down to the bare metal, had it repainted, and the fingerprints kind of reappeared in it again. And then that wasn't good enough. It still was a tourist thing where people would stop, take pictures, and look at it and everything. And what they wound up doing finally was having that section of the gate cut out and replaced with a whole brand new section, and the fingerprints kind of still appear in there. So we have no explanation for that other than the paranormal. So that's a little bit about Resurrection Cemetery. Then we go over to Worth, over to 111th there in Worth, and we have the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery there. And if you go in there, we have the grave of Mary Ellis Quinn, who was a very young girl. She was devoted to prayer. Supposedly she had the gift of healing, and she died some years ago too. And people do show up at her grave site. It's an easy grave to spot. It's got like two little evergreen bushes by the sides of the grave. One side of the stone, it's a tall monument kind of standing there. Well, not real tall, but it's one of the taller ones there. And one side of it says Riley, and one side of it says Quinn. And she's buried there. And for many years, they didn't put her name on the stone just because they didn't want people going there and doing a pilgrimage to it and everything. And then finally, they just gave up on that and put her name on there. For a number of years, too, the cemetery itself, if you would go there and ask for a little grave finder, one of the little maps they give you if you're looking for someone's grave, and you wanted to find the grave, they were kind of reluctant to give them out. Now they don't, though. Now they have like a whole stack of them sitting there, and you can just help yourself and take them and find the grave very easily. Like I said, it's easy to spot because she's got the two bushes by the side of the stone, and also, too, people leave a lot of things there. People go there and pray, and supposedly she still has the gift of healings and things that she does there. They leave little statues, they leave money, rosary beads, just all sorts of things people leave by her grave there. And people have been known to smell flowers there. Even in the dead of wintertime, when there'll be like a snow, a very hard freeze, that type of thing, people will go there and they'll experience flowers. Like you smell a perfumed scent of like roses there and that. And also, too, people have photographed the stone, and they've known to see a hovering of a figure of a girl wearing like a white dress, like a white kind of flowing dress kind of thing, hovering above the stone there. So just a little bit that kind of goes on with that. Supposedly, to my knowledge, what I had heard was that she was to be canonized for the sainthood. That has not happened yet, though, and this has been many years, so I don't know about that one, if that's ever going to happen or not. But that's the story of Mary Ellis Quinn over at the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery. Okay, one of my favorites is the old Bachelor's Grove Cemetery over on 143rd there in Midlothian. Bachelor's Grove used to be the old Midlothian Turnpike, if you know this. Everybody, I think we've all kind of grown up with some of the legends and some of the stories that go on at Bachelor's Grove. Bachelor's Grove, to me, in my opinion, should kind of be like a tourist attraction, because if you go there, especially this time of year, if you go weekends, on the Friday nights, you don't want to be there at night. I shouldn't say Friday nights. I want to discourage people from going there at night. But if you go down to Fridays, to Saturdays, and Sundays, you won't be there alone. There will be many, many people that will be there visiting the cemetery. It's an old cemetery, kind of a little hard to find. You kind of more or less have to know where to look for it. And you really are not supposed to be there because it is a closed cemetery. There's a chain across the trail that you would take up that does say closed, but for all the good it does, it may as well just not be there because so many people do use that trail to go up there. It used to be the old Midlothian Turnpike. You used to be able to drive your car right down that little trail, that road, and right up to the gates of the cemetery, but you no longer can do that. What you do now is you park your car across the street in the Forest Reserve parking lot and then walk across and go in there. It's an old cemetery. Gosh, probably goes back to the 1830s, maybe even a little bit before. The name of the place itself is also somewhat of a mystery. Bachelor's Grove. They think it was originally settled by like some German, like a German farming community, single men that settled it, and then later on sent for their wives and their brides and that kind of thing. But originally being single, they were bachelors, so they called it Bachelors. Another one theory of it was a family that was there that was called Batch Elder, and then they named it after them, and then gradually just shortened it from Batch Elder to Bachelors, that type of thing. A lot of activity seems to go on in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Some of the paranormal investigators and things that I've come in contact with that I talk to say, no, not a whole lot goes on there anymore, that kind of thing. I tend to believe that things still do happen there. A lot of people still do investigating there. If you do go there and visit, you really never know what you're going to find there. Sometimes you'll have a crew out there. One time we took a group out and there was a crew there doing some film work. They were filming, doing a documentary on it. You'll see people out there chanting to the trees and doing different things and different religious rituals they do out there and stuff like that. For a long time, too, a lot of satanic rituals and things would happen out there. They kind of like to discourage that. They also like to discourage visitation at night. During the day, if you go there, you're really not bothered by anyone. But at night, if you're there after dark, the police really do not want you in there. So it's not a wise thing to do, not to go in there at night. Old cemetery, like I said, a lot of the stones are gone. I think there were originally, somewhere around 120 stones, I believe. Now there's probably, maybe 17 to 20 stones left there, or parts of stone, because the cemetery has been so vandalized over the years, throughout the years. Many of the residents that live there in Midlothian, close to the cemetery, wouldn't be unusual in years past for them to wake up and find a tombstone on their front lawn that some kids, as a practical joke, would pull out from the cemetery and throw on someone's lawn or that. Over the years, they've made the attempts to clean it up quite a bit. For many, many years, it was very overgrown and very just disheveled and not good. They did put a fence around it with like a barbed wire top on it, but that seems to do no good because they cut holes through the fence and the gates are always off, so you always have access to walk in there. We do have a lot of strange happenings there. People take photographs. You get little faces that show up on the tombstones. Faces show above the tombstones. Trees there tend to shake violently for whatever reason, even when there's no wind. They'll sometimes just shake for no reason. Many legends stemmed up over there. There's a legend of a farmer that was with an old-fashioned plow. His image has been seen. And what happened, his story was something startled his horse, and he couldn't dislodge himself from the plow. So what happened was the horse got scared, got spooked, and dragged the plow and the farmer into the lagoon there, and they drowned. And his image has been seen there. Last time that one was seen, that it's been recorded, to the best of my knowledge, was 1969, and that was actually seen by a couple of state troopers. So kind of credible witnesses have seen that one. We do have the image of the lady in white there, the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. We have some stories with that. Also, too, if you look up on the website about Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, you'll see some of the famous photos of it. There's a very, very famous photo of a woman sitting on the tombstone there, and that was taken by a group led by Mr. Dale Kismerick, who happens to be the president of the Ghost and Paranormal Society of Illinois. And his group was out there one time, and they were doing some work and some research on the paranormal, and just happened to take some photos, and this woman's image turned up on it. It's a very famous photo, so you'll see that one there, and I don't think it's a fake. It seems like it's pretty legitimate to me. Many people believe that this woman happens to be the Mrs. Humphreys, the wife of Senator John Humphreys, because her child is buried in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, so they believe her spirit is kind of at unrest there. She kind of is always back there with her baby. Also, too, if you take a walk around the cemetery, like in the back by some of the trails and things there, you'll see many foundations from homes, or not, I don't necessarily think they were homes, maybe they were caretakers' cottages at one time, or sheds just out house equipment that was needed at one time to care for the cemetery. But there's foundations, and there's a lot of little wells you'll see, like little wells that are no longer in use, that are kind of abandoned, so you'll see them there. There is a story, too, of a home that appears. There's like an old-fashioned farmhouse, like with a wooden porch type thing that appears, and you kind of go up to it, and then it kind of just dematerializes too and disappears. Although that's a little controversy about that one too, because it doesn't. A lot of people say it's not actually in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. It's a little further down the road, in Bachelor's Grove Woods, which is part of the Forest Preserve, and they say that's where the house appears. So if you're looking for the house in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, you're kind of looking in the wrong spot there. So many strange things do happen at Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. It's nice to see it, to visit it, to go there. The Cook County Forest Preserve actually does own the cemetery now. It is closed, so there are no more burials taking place there. I think the last burial, I may be wrong about this, was 1985. That would have been the last burial, and that was not actually a body, like a body in a casket type burial. It was some cremated remains that were buried there, and that's the last one that was in there. The way you close a cemetery down, if you want to officially close it, it has to be like 100 years from the last burial. So 1985 would have been the last burial, so 100 years from 1985, you could actually close that cemetery down and then take that ground and use it for something else. Or the other way you do that is if you want to actually physically dig up the remains and the stones and have them moved. Something like this, the cemetery being so old and families maybe possibly just being gone themselves from the loved ones that are in there, no one left to visit the graves anymore, that would be kind of hard to do. There was a big thing too about when they were doing that O'Hare expansion, where they wanted to have that little cemetery there, they wanted to move, and people were all up in arms about that. They didn't want to move. So from time to time this kind of does happen, where they will want to move a cemetery and take the property and use the land for something else. Although I haven't heard anything about Bachelor's Grove, that going on with them. They're kind of, it's kind of just staying as it is. And I hope it does. I hope it stays the way it is. It's a very old historic cemetery. There is a little museum somewhere too. I think you can look that one up online too, dedicated to the memory of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And they do have some headstones in there and some things about the cemetery, some information about that, so you can find out about that. Fascinating cemetery to do a little research on, and you get one of these nice autumn days, and there again I have to stress during the day, you want to go take a walk around and look in the cemetery. It's well worth doing. I would recommend you doing that. A little bit about burial customs I want to talk about. The church, and when I say the church, I'm talking about the Catholic Church now. Church has been kind of changing the rules on some of the burial customs. They know for many years, I know the Catholic Church frowned on cremation itself and cremated remains. Now they are a little more lenient on that. They do allow cremations and they allow cremated remains to be buried into cemeteries. Some rules vary from cemetery to cemetery. Something else they're allowing now is also multiple burials. So say you have one plot and you want to put two people buried in the same plot, you can do that in certain cemeteries. Now, there again, some cemeteries allow it, some don't. The rule on that one, though, is when the first one is buried, you have to go down deeper. You have to dig down 12 feet, put in your first casket, and then the next one would be on top of that, and that would be 6 feet down. So, because I guess the law is 6 feet under, they have to be buried 6 feet deep in the cement box. And so now they're allowing that. So they're making some changes with the cemeteries about things like that. Probably one of the most fascinating places and some of the most fascinating cemeteries that I've ever been to are not around our area, although our area's got a lot of good ones, but those would be in old New Orleans, down in Louisiana. If ever you get down to New Orleans, the cemeteries there are really big tourist attractions there. They give tours on a daily basis to them. They actually call them cities of the dead because that's what they look like, because they have all above ground little tombs. They look like the old little mausoleums that you'll see in some of our cemeteries there, although they're a little bit smaller, not quite as big as that. And they're all above ground, and the reason everything's above ground down there is because they just can't dig. You can't put any burials below ground because the water table is so high. You dig down a couple of feet and you're already in water. And also, too, when they get real heavy rain and tropical storms down there, what would tend to happen was the ground would get so saturated that caskets would tend to bob right up through the ground and come up again. So that led to a lot of what you didn't want to see happening. So they stick with the above-ground burial. It's a very economic way of doing it. You will go and you will tour some of these cemeteries. And like I say, they have these tours almost on a daily basis down there. And I do recommend that you go with a guided tour to the cemeteries, especially if you're going to Old St. Louis Cemetery number 1 down there. They do have signs on the cemeteries that visitors to the cemeteries are welcome. The Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans and City of New Orleans does welcome visitors, but they recommend that you come with someone else because they can't guarantee your safety. A lot of this is just because of the way they're built. You're ideal for mugging. That's why I say go with a group, go with a tour. Don't go there alone, that type of thing. People do tend to hide around those little tombs, the little homes, that kind of stuff, and you're kind of easy pickings to get mugged there or maybe have some physical harm happen to you. Also, too, derelicts and that kind of thing, people that are maybe drug addicts or alcoholics, kind of getting out of a fix or whatever, will actually crawl in the cemetery and go into a tomb and just fall asleep there, and just till it wears off. Okay, we're going to stop right here for a moment, take a little break. I'll come back. I'll pick up where I left off here with the New Orleans cemeteries, and we'll be back in just a moment, folks. Thanks for listening, and please stick with us. Back in a moment.
You're listening to Paranormal Radio with Bob Tricek from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Thursday, October the 8th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Bob Tricek and Paranormal Radio.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me back on here, and thanks for tuning back in with us and listening, folks. We got to give some acknowledgement to our sister station here, Jack FM 89.7 Norwich. We will be aired on there now. When are we airing the show on there now?
We'll be on this Thursday, October the 8th at 10 o'clock a.m.
10 in the morning we'll be on, so you can hear the broadcast there. Also, too, John Shikanda, our producer here at Windy City Radio, he puts these shows up really quickly. Sometimes he does them like the next day, sometimes it's a day or two, depending on his schedule, how much work he has to do. And you can catch the shows on YouTube. Go to Paranormal Radio and today's date, which would be 10/5/15, and the show will pop up. And then also, too, go to the Windy City Network, www.windycityhometown.com, and you can listen to this, not only this show, but all the other shows we've got here at Windy City Network. Meet the Chicago Historians, the Dawn of Sports, Chicago Junction, the Armchair Experts, Wealth and Wisdom, shows with a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. They bring on some really good guests, and some entertaining shows, and also to you learn a few things listening to these. So tune into the Windy City Network there, and you'll be surprised at what you hear. Okay, I'm going to get back to where I left off there. I was talking a bit before the break about cemeteries and about New Orleans cemeteries, and talking about how they do the above-ground burials there and that kind of thing in the cemeteries. It's a very economical way of burying. Instead of having multiple lots and multiple burial plots, you'll have one tomb. And you'll look at this tomb when you tour the cemetery, and there'll be many, many names on it of a family, generations, going back to the 1700s. And you're saying, how could there be this many people in this small little house, in this tomb? Well, the way they do this is they have a rule down there. It's 1 year and 1 day. So the way this works is a person dies, and their remains are buried. The casket is taken. They open up the tomb. Casket slides in. There's like a little shelf in there. Some of the bigger tombs have 2 shelves. And the casket slides in. And then the tomb is sealed back up. And after 1 year and 1 day, and the heat and the humidity and the moisture down there, you can open up the tomb. And then they take like a rake, like a wooden rake type thing. And everything is deteriorated amazingly. Like within 1 year and 1 day, there's very little left. The bones and of the remains of the person that was buried, and the casket fragments and stuff. So whatever's there, they take this rake and just push to the back of the tomb. There's a little slit there, and everything goes through the slit and down into the bottom of the tomb, into the ground, and it's jumbled up down there with all the rest of the ancestors. And then you're ready for the next family member that would pass away that would be buried in there. So that's how you have so many in there. Sometimes you do run into a problem there, though. Say you have someone buried, and like say grandma passes away, she dies, and then it has not been like 1 year and 1 day yet, say maybe 5 months into that, or maybe 6 months or whatever into it, grandpa passes away. So, now what do? We have a problem. The law is 1 year and 1 day, and grandpa just died. We can't put him in the tomb because grandma still hasn't finished her 1 year and 1 day, so we can get her remains down into the slit, into the bottom of the tomb. What you kind of do is put grandpa into a temporary vault, into a holding vault, receiving vault, and he stays there, and then at the end of the 1 year and 1 day, you take the rake again, push the remains back of what's left of grandma, and then what's also left of grandpa would now go into the family tomb, and he's in there for the rest of his time, and that's the way that works. So it's a very economical way of burying. You can bury, the whole, generations, the whole family in one tomb. The architecture on some of these tombs is just fantastic. They no longer allow filming to be done in the cemeteries down there, the Archdiocese of New Orleans, because they had some problems with that. They had made, if you remember years ago, Easy Rider was filmed in St. Louis Cemetery 1. And they didn't like the idea that some of the tombs they felt were being a little desecrated, because they had one scene in the film where they were shooting up acid on drugs, and they were doing it inside one of the tombs, and so they just don't like that kind of thing. So they kind of frown on that, unless they're doing something about the history, historical aspects of the cemetery and that. And St. Louis Cemetery number 1, which is a very, very old cemetery, probably one of the earliest cemeteries there. It's well worth seeing, but there again, like I say, you have to go with a group with that one. I went into St. Louis Cemetery one actually with police escort and canine dogs, because it's just not safe. You do tend to hear gunshots over there too sometimes, so it's kind of not safe that way. But it's very worth seeing because you have some very famous people buried there. One of the most notables is Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau was the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and her tomb is there, and people do love to regularly make pilgrimages to her tomb and ask for favors of the voodoo queen, and they like to mark her tomb with 4 little X's and leave little tokens, some coins or some Mardi Gras beads or flowers by her tomb there, with hopes that she will grant their petitions or your wishes, whatever you would like done. They do frown on you kind of marking the tombs, though, because they do try to take care of them. They do paint them and whitewash them from time to time and spruce it up a little bit like that. I don't know if their cemeteries have the same thing we have here at ours, where we have the perpetual care, where the cemetery cares for the graves forever. They do the care there, because some of the tombs down there are kind of in disrepair and falling over and that kind of thing. So I don't know if they have that. It might be left more up to the family. I don't know what the rules are down there, but well worth seeing. The cemetery architecture down there on some of the tombs and stuff is just very stunning. It's sort of like our Rose Hill, here in the city of Chicago. Very, very old tombs, very historic. Well worth seeing. Well with that. Okay, I'm going to break off from cemeteries a little bit there. We'll break from that. And I'll talk a little bit about H.H. Holmes, because in a couple of weeks I'm going to be over at next week I'm going to be over at the Alsop Library and kind of talking about the Columbian Exposition and H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes, some people like to consider him the world's first serial killer. Some people don't like to consider him a serial killer at all. I like to say he's a serial killer, because if you kill more than 2, to me, that's a serial killer. But some people say he didn't fit the mode of a serial killer type thing. And just in case you're not familiar with the story, probably very soon you will be. It's finally now, if you noticed at the end of the summer on the news, they had it shown a couple of times where they finally got around to filming the Eric Larson book, The Devil in the White City, which is all about the Columbian Exposition in Chicago and about H.H. Holmes. And they're going to make that into a film starring Leonardo DiCaprio. I think he's scheduled to play or set to play H.H. Holmes. And although not really associated with the Columbian Exposition, however, now because of that book, he's forever married to it. The H.H. Holmes and the Columbian Exposition are kind of inseparable. But definitely H.H. Holmes was in operation during the time of the Columbian Exposition and capitalizing on the fair and the crowds of people that came to the fair to make money and do that. And he did that, of course, by murdering. And that was his thing. When you research H.H. Holmes and you look for information and things on him, what you find, it's very, very hard to determine about him what's true and what's not true, because the man just told so many stories and lied so much. It's really hard. So you kind of have to find the facts that seem to be the best and seem to fit, what you're looking for the best, and use those facts for your story, because it's just really hard to determine what's true and what's not true about the man. Kind of the basic story about Mr. Holmes is he came to Chicago in 1886. He went to the University of Michigan, became a licensed pharmacist and a physician. So he was an educated man. He was by no means a very, stupid man at all, and not just a run-of-the-mill, average serial killer. So he was very educated, and a sad thing about him is that he could have made it in life very legitimately. I mean, as a doctor and a pharmacist, but he chose to do the dark side and chose to use murder as his thing. He felt he was just uncontrollable. Like there was some driving force inside of him, forcing him to do this, and it was just something that was uncontrollable for him. He wound up building, a big building over on 63rd and Wallace, and up until not too long ago, I lived right on 63rd and Harlem, so if you went further down on 63rd Street, it would take you right up to it. It's in the old Englewood neighborhood, and actually there's a post office building there now. And he built a big building there that was, in the days he built it was called the Castle, but now people kind of call it the Murder Castle, because this is where he operated and took a lot of his victims and killed them. And what he actually did is he built this building for the Columbian Exposition, to kind of capitalize on the exposition. And he had, the ground floor of it was commercial businesses. He had a drugstore down there. He actually had a restaurant. I think he had a jewelry business, a candy shop. He had all these different things down on the first floor was all commercial enterprises, and then second and third floors would be rooms. His offices was up there, and he rented rooms out up there to people that would come to Chicago for the exposition and people that worked at the Columbian Expositions that had lodgings there. One of the conditions for H.H. Holmes is if you wanted to get a job in any of his stores or any of his enterprises, any of the things he was doing, if you wanted employment with him, you had to take out a life insurance policy. He would take the policy out and pay the premiums, but he was the beneficiary. So he had other ulterior motives. What he did with many of his victims is he cashed in insurance policies on them and collected. His penchants seemed to be for blonde-haired women. He had a thing for women, for murdering women. Blonde-haired women was his thing. Although he did kill men too, and children on occasion too, when he could, do it, when the occasion would allow him to make money. His whole goal was not so much just murdering for the sake of murdering, like a run-of-the-mill type serial killer. It was to make money, which he did do. He did this. Finally, things kind of caught up with him. He had a run of this for a little while here, and when the fair closed, when the Columbian Exposition closed, things kind of slowed up for him there. People were no longer renting rooms from him. People were not working for the fair. They weren't renting rooms over there. So he had this building there with nothing going on in it, and he kind of jumped ship. He went over to Fort Worth, Texas, and there he had two sisters. One he promised to marry, but what happened with them was he swindled them, and he wound up killing both of them and inheriting their property, and he was actually going to build another murder castle over there and continue his Chicago operations. But it didn't happen. That plot got foiled. It didn't happen, and he was actually arrested on a horse swindling scheme. The man did so many different swindling things. He claimed to have a cure for alcoholism. He would sell some sort of a packet of things through the mail. He actually had a mail order business where he would sell this concoction to cure alcoholism. Many real estate scams he had. Supposedly he had some sort of a machine that turned water into natural gas. Just all these different cons and things he ran and all this, in addition to murdering people and collecting on insurance policies on victims. Another thing he liked to do with people that he murdered was in the murder castle, down in the basement of it. He had like a big workshop down there, and he actually had a crematory built in that. And what he would do is he would strip the flesh off of victims, take them and assemble their skeletons, and then turn around and sell the skeletons to medical schools for teaching. The skeletons. We've all seen those skeletons they have on like a metal stand for medical schools for people that study medicine. And he had no problem doing this because he had been a doctor. He was a pharmacist, so he had connections in medicine. So he was able to sell these skeletons like this with no problem at all. So he kind of double dipped. He'd collect on your insurance, and he'd also collect on your skeletal remains too. So anyway, he gets arrested for horse swindling, and he goes to jail for a while. He's incarcerated, and while he's in there in jail, he meets up with another prisoner in there. Marion Hodges was this man's name. He's kind of another weirdo too, and he tells him, I've got this plot for murdering someone. What I'm going to do is I want to fake my own death. I want to fake my death, collect on the insurance on this, and it's going to yield $10,000. It seemed to always be a $10,000 policy. Now we're going back to the 1890s, so $10,000 these days was a tremendous amount of money. And he says, but what I need to find a lawyer, some lawyer that's not legit, that can kind of help me out with this. I need a crooked guy. So this Hodges says, well, I've got somebody. This guy's he's a crook himself, and he'll help you out with this and everything. And he says, what's in it for me? And he says, well, I'll pay you $500. So, okay, he was cool with this. Well, then what happens with this is Holmes gets out of jail. He does hook up with this lawyer, and what happens is this plot gets foiled too. The insurance company kind of catches wind of this and says, well, wait a minute, you have remains here. Because, of course, they do. When someone dies and you're trying to collect insurance policy on a person, they do send someone out to investigate the remains and say, well, this is the person or it isn't the person. They say, well, this doesn't look like H.H. Holmes. This isn't him, this body that we have here. So he was just using some cadaver that he found somewhere or something like this. And it's kind of strange that he slipped through the cracks on this one. The insurance company rather never pursued this any further, and Holmes never bothered, but he just kind of let it go, and that's where it stayed. So he never got brought up on any charges or anything for this. He just kind of slipped through the cracks on this one, as he did with so many things throughout his life. He managed to kind of slip through the cracks on stuff, and that's why his murder spree kind of went on for as long as it did. And he didn't bother with this. But then what happened was this Marion Hodges in prison got mad at him because he says, well, I didn't get my $500 that you promised me. So he turned Holmes in for this, and so then Holmes kind of was on the run. What happened with that was he hooked up with another one of his associates, a Mr. Benjamin Pittizel. Mr. Pittigel is another strange one. Holmes hooked up with all these strange people. I guess weirdos attract weirdos, as they say. This man kind of had a strange life. He was an associate of Holmes. He was an alcoholic himself. He was married, had 5 children, and Holmes comes to him with this idea. Okay, I'm going to fake your death, and we're going to collect, and $5,000 is going to go to your wife and your 5 children. $5,000 is going to go with me. So Pittigel agrees to this, and again, something happens with this plot. It doesn't happen. Something goes awry here, but Holmes ends up murdering Mr. Pittigel himself, ends up murdering him, and he convinces his wife to give him custody of 3 of the children. So he gets, not the good thing to do, but he gets custody of 3 of the kids, and he decides to take a run. He runs around the country, and he's kind of undercover, and he figures having 3 kids would be a good cover for him. He'd be least suspected. Like I say, these people that are serial killers like this, they're very good manipulators. They're very good talkers, and they can convince you into doing things and stuff that you normally wouldn't do. A rational person, wouldn't do, but they're very good at convincing you. And this is the trick he used on Mrs. Pittigel to get custody of 3 of the children. And again, he takes out insurance policies on 3 of the kids, and we all know what happens with that. Mrs. Pittigel becomes suspicious about this, and she's inquiring about her husband. And of course, Holmes lies about this. He says, "Oh no, your husband is in Canada because of this scheme. The checks will be coming soon, but he has to hide out. He's in Canada. He's over there using a different name. Oh no, now we're over here. He's working at a bank in Ohio someplace. He's doing this, he's doing that." And all the time, the man was already murdered and dead and out of the picture. Then what Holmes does is he takes the 3 children up to Canada. And for a short time, Mrs. Pittigel, it was very close. They were like maybe 8 blocks apart from each other. Holmes was in one part, and Mrs. Pittigel and her 2 other children were in another part. They were very close to each other, but Holmes managed to escape and get into Canada, and with 3 of the children. And what he did was he murdered 2 of the girls there in Canada, and he wound up murdering the boy back here in Indianapolis, right outside of Indianapolis, a small little suburb there. I forget the name of it, where he murdered the boy. A detective in Philadelphia, because Holmes now was kind of bouncing around all over the country, renting places here and living in homes there and all over and this kind of thing. But this detective in Philadelphia kind of catches on to Holmes and sees what's going on, and he starts tracking him down. And he does trace him down to Indiana. He traces him down to a St. Vincent Street address in Canada, finds the remains of the 2 girls, and Holmes is eventually caught, brought up on charges for murder. He confesses to murdering 27 people, but some of the people that he named that he murdered were still alive. So he even lied about this. So he said he murdered these people. Some of these people were still around. They were still alive. So like I say, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true about him. So the story goes that the murder count for Holmes could have gone well up to 200. We just don't know. Because so many people that showed up for the Columbian Exposition and stuff kind of disappeared. Some of them never knew what happened to them. They came maybe to get a job at the exposition and wound up never going back to their home. And they figured, they just stayed in Chicago. They kind of fell through the cracks or whatever. And they think some of these people that managed to disappear might have been Holmes' murder victims. Sort of the same kind of thing that happened some years later with John Wayne Gacy, if you remember, when he murdered all these young men. Some of them kind of slipped through the cracks, and they were like vagrant type things, and they just disappeared, and no one seemed to know what happened to them. So it was with this same kind of situation. So Holmes is brought up on murder charges and sentenced to die, and he's to be hung. He talks to the executioner, and he wants a clean execution. He says, "Can you do a clean job so I can, my neck will snap and I will die instantly?" But this doesn't happen. Holmes does hang there, and he's for about 15-20 minutes he kind of hangs there in agony while his neck is he's being slowly strangled to death. And on his death, then he also requested that his remains in his coffin be encased in cement. He wanted his coffin open, filled with cement, and then his coffin buried in cement, because he didn't want anyone to dig him up and do anything to him like he had done to victims to make money on anyone digging his remains up and fooling around with him. Where he's buried is also somewhat of a mystery. They're kind of secretive about that just for that reason. They don't want people going there and trying to pull anything off on that, although they do have kind of a place kind of pegged down where they believe he is actually buried, where his remains are. So that's kind of the story of Mr. H.H. Holmes there. It's just about 8 o'clock now. I am going to call this a wrap. Like I said, this was going to be a little bit of a short show. I had actually, like I said, scheduled a few guests to be on for the show, but for one reason or another, they kind of canceled on me. The folks that were supposed to show up from the haunted house, I hope nothing happened, because I tried calling them this afternoon. I didn't get a response from them, so I hope everything's all right. No one is sick or no one had an accident or anything. And Colleen Carroll, of course, was a little under the weather, so she was unable to come on. So that's kind of paranormal for this evening. That's my October show. I will be back on again in November. run by some of these things again for you. The 10th and 11th, this week, Saturday and Sunday, the Paranormal Conference over at the Moraine Valley Community College. Well worth your effort if you're interested in the paranormal and crystals and healing and all this kind of stuff. They have many guest speakers there that do lectures and things, and you'll find it very interesting to do. Some people go and they do the 2 days. Some people, the 1 day is enough for them walking around there and that. That will be at Moraine Valley Community College Saturday from 10 to 7, Sunday 11 to 5. October 14th at 6 o'clock, I'll be at the Elsip Library talking a little more in detail than I did tonight on H.H. Holmes and the Columbian Exposition. October 2nd, at the Orland Park Library talking about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Brookfield Library on October 28th, Egyptian Book of the Dead. And at the October 29th at the Justice Library. Over there, not too far from Resurrection Cemetery, there on Archer Road there. And there I will be partnering with Miss Colleen Carroll. We'll be doing a kind of a partnership on that lecture there, talking about ghost hunting and with a little bit of a demonstration on ghost hunting equipment. So if you're not familiar with that and you want to come out and see what some of the equipment is and some of the techniques used for modern-day ghost hunters, and we'll be talking about a little bit of the history of that too, and some cemeteries too we'll be talking about there with that one. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Also, thank you to Mr. Alex Kurt and the Giant City Slickers for allowing me to play their song on the air here. A great group there. If you listen to the song at the beginning, they are the Giant City Slickers. Info at giantcityslickers.com. You can get a hold of them and see where they're playing at and about their music if you like that type of music. And also you can visit giantcityslickers.com. That one's in capital letters, giantcityslickers.com, all in capital, and that's their website, and all their information will come up on there. Mr. John DeVita, thank you again, sir, for allowing me to do these shows. Like I said, I had a couple of months' absence here because I had some personal things going on and moving and just all sorts of stuff happening there, so I was unable to do the show for a couple of months. But now we're all set to go, and we'll be doing our show again in November, regular like usual. And also thank you to Jack FM 89.7 WRHS in Norwich, our sister station for airing our shows. That will be aired this Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. Okay, that's about it for Paranormal Radio. Thank you so much, folks, for listening. These shows are just an absolute joy for me to do. I love them, and I missed it the last couple of months or so. It's real good to be doing the show again. Bye-bye. See you again in November.
You have been listening to Paranormal Radio with Bob Tricek from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. Paranormal Radio was directed by John DeVita, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Seconda. And radio station manager for WRHS FM Norwich is Mr. Kevin Zeflik. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Monday, October the 5th, year 2015. Until next month, be safe, and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois, a Ridgewood Community High School radio station. Thanks for listening and have a great day, everyone.